What's up, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition. Welcome back to another edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast, brought to you by the good guys over at FantasyDegens.com. Hope everybody had a great Monday, getting back to work from the 4-day turkey break. Hopefully everybody made some cash last night. The late night hammer proved to be highly efficient for me, as I was literally as far away from the cash line as I could be, but I also had 3 or 4 guys going: Rashawn Holmes, like Zach LaVine, Belicia. I had a couple of those guys going in that late night hammer, and guess what? I cashed. So it was a good night overall. Had some luck also in my NFL best balls, so things are looking good, looking up in that way. Hopefully we get into the cash line again tonight. We have a nice little 7-gamer. Yesterday we had 6 games. Today we have 7. Some pretty decent games on the slate, so let's go ahead and run them down. We got Detroit at Cleveland. Detroit minus 2.5 on the road here with a 214 total in Cleveland. Last 5 games, Detroit is 30th, dead last in terms of pace. Cleveland is 20th. So not really a good pace spot here. We see the totals kind of lower, but there's still a few usage spots that you're going to want to play in this one. The Magic at the Wizards. This game is also obviously going to be a really nice pace-up spot here for the Magic in Washington. Washington minus 1.5 here at home with a 227 total. That looks to be the third highest total on the board right now. We have 2 games without a total, so those will be interesting to watch for. But, of course, this game is going to have a nice pace. Like I said, the Wizards are number 1. They're ranked number 1 overall in terms of pace over their last 5 games. Orlando, 24th. So, massive pace-up spot here for Orlando. We know Washington doesn't play a lot of defense. So, massive pace-up spot here for the Magic. Mavericks at the Pelicans. Dallas minus 3.5 here on the road. 233 total. Highest one on the board. Mavericks ranked 4th in terms of pace over their last 5 games. New Orleans Pelicans ranked 5th. So, you have the 4th and 5th fastest teams over their last 5 games right now. Both teams are just running with insane pace. The Mavericks have sped up a ton over the course of the season. They were pretty close to one of the last teams starting the season, and now they're up in the top 10. So that one's obviously going to be very enticing, going to be very, very popular. As we know, Luka will be in play. Looks like Lonzo Ball is finally back to his regular minutes, played 33 last game. So this one will be really interesting, and you're going to have some of it. So the Heat at the Raptors, no line or total on this game. Dragic, we already know, is out. Kyle Lowry looks like he is going to continue to be out. They thought he might return. I would look for that one. Looks like Serge Ibaka is back. He played 21 minutes last game, so that is good for the Raptors. They needed him back. In terms of pace, Miami 18th last 5, Toronto 22nd. So not exactly the high-paced game we would look for in that one. I expect that total to probably be in the two teens probably. So few spots in it that I like, of course. Rockets at the Spurs. Looks like LaMarcus Aldridge is questionable still. We don't know if he's going to play. Looks like Capella will be back. Daniel House looks like he is questionable to play. He was sick and missed last game. Few games, not a line or total in that one. But, of course, you have Houston, who's ranked 3rd in terms of pace over the last 5, and San Antonio, who's 16th. San Antonio, again, just staying right there in the middle of the pack in terms of pace. So that's going to be a game we're going to look to target as well, of course. A lot of big names, of course, for the Rockets more so. Lakers at the Nuggets. Denver, minus 1.5. Small little home favorite here. 209 on the total. The Lakers 14th in terms of pace over their last 5. And Denver, we know, is ranked near the last. They're ranked towards the latter half. They're 26th over their last 5. So Denver's not exactly running with a lot of pace. We know that they're a slower team. They like to grind down teams at home. So that's an interesting game all in all. We'll get to that one. Blazers at the Clippers for your late night hammer over on the West Coast. We have the Clippers minus 9.5 here at 229 total. Portland 8th over their last 5. LA Clippers 2nd. So this is a game you're going to want to get in. Obviously, it has a lot of good things. PG, Kawhi, also has Dame. Carmelo's been playing really good. Was named Western Conference Player of the week or month or whatever. So that was going to be really interesting. All right, let's jump right in. At point guards, Luka Doncic, 11-3. New Orleans, 6th most fantasy points to that point guard spot over the last 5, 60+ in his last 6 to 7. We have a really high total here. Fast-paced game. We know that it's going to fit Luka really well. Yeah, he's probably too cheap. Once again, LBJ at 10-2. He's put up 55, 46, 64.3, and 57 in his last 4 on the road. He's garnering right around a 35% usage rate at 34.5 in his last 5 on the road. Goes on the road in Denver. It's not the greatest matchup. Jamal Murray's a pretty decent defender. It'll likely be like Will Barton or it'll probably be Barton or it might be Gary Harris. I'm not exactly sure who they'll throw on LBJ. However, I still think that he can have success. Fred VanVleet at 7.5. We get a nice little price drop here. I'm guessing it's because they're playing Miami. I'm totally fine with the price on VanVleet. He could very well get Butler. That is yet to be known. But he's still put up over 42 in his last 4 or 5. He's put up back-to-back 49-point games in his last 2 at home. So really liking some Fred VanVleet at his price. I think nobody will go there, obviously thinking that Butler will be on him. But his usage is just too high. He gets way too much usage. He's a beast. So I'm not worried. We know that he has upside. Totally fine with that. Jamal Murray at 6.6. Of course, he's going to get more of some Rondo D. So last 5 home, he's garnered 26.1% usage in his last 5 at home. He's put up 35 or more in his last 3 or 4 at home. Jamal Murray is that GP play, that wild card. If he goes off for 40 fantasy plus, 40 points or more, then obviously you're going to probably be taking down something. And he's very cheap at 6.6. Not the greatest, but he's been playing a lot better at home as well. So it's a decent spot. It's a good spot for him, and his price is just right. Markelle Fultz at 5.5. Just put up 34.5 versus Golden State. We have a game here against Washington on the road. Nice little pace-up spot, like I mentioned. He's very cheap for the minutes that he's playing. And, of course, Washington allowing the 5th most fantasy points to that point guard spot over the last 5. A nice pace-up spot here. So Markelle Fultz will be in play once again. Lonzo Ball at 5.4. Like I said, played 33 minutes last game, put up 31.5 fantasy points. Dallas allowing the 8th most fantasy points to the point guard spot over the last 5. Had right under 22% usage in that game at 21.7. So Lonzo's back to his full minutes. That's good news for the Pelicans, and that's good news for us because he's only 5.4 tonight in a really good spot. So Lonzo will obviously probably be a little chalky, I would assume, but it's going to be good chalk, I think. Shooting guard, Harden, 12.5. You're talking about Giannis type price tag here. We know Harden can do it. He put up 85.3 last game. San Antonio allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the shooting guard spot over the last 5. And he's had a 38.1% usage rate over his last 5 road games. Harden is good. We don't need to talk too much about that one. I don't mind if you play Harden. His price is very high. Brad Beal at 8.6. I think you get a nice little price drop on Beal here. He's put up over 39 in his last 3. He's put up 36, 57.3, and 44 in his last 3 at home, and a smidge under 27% usage at 26.7% in his last 5 home games. Yeah, I'm a fan of Beal here at home against the Magic. Fournier is not that great on defense. He's likely who he will get, or maybe Fultz even, and I'm just totally fine with that. So Bill at 8.6, I'm a fan at that price. Jimmy Butler at 7.6, of course. VanVleet's defense is not that great. We know that Toronto has given it up to the guards. So Jimmy Butler at 7.6, 24.4% usage in his last 5 on the road. No Dragic again. Over 30 minutes in all but 1 game. Is this the game that we see Jimmy finally go for 40-plus? He has not gone for 40-plus here in a few games, so it'll be interesting to see. So I'm a fan at that price. Lou Williams at 6.4. We know Portland's terrible against the shooting guard spot, allowing the 5th most fantasy points over the last 5 to that spot. He's now put up over 42 in his last 2 of 3 at home, and he has carried a 27.4% usage rate at home in his last 5, even with Kawhi and PG playing. Lou Williams is still going to get his. So a lot of people will probably look over him with both Kawhi and PG playing in this game, but this is a great spot for Lou Williams, and he's priced down. He's 6.4. Likely probably still going to see 28 to 30 minutes off the bench. Hey, these pricings are not that great today, but we'll take it. Obviously, it's benefiting us. So Evan Fournier on the flip side of that Washington game at 6.2. Washington allowing the 10th most fantasy points to the shooting guard spot over their last 5. 28.9% usage in his last 5 on the road. 34 or more in his last 4 on the road. 34 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4 on the road. So Fournier, of course, continues to play well. He gets a great spot here, obviously, against Washington, a nice pace-up spot. So Fournier at 6.2. T totally fine with. I forgot to mention Derrick Rose on the point guard spot. He's not playing a lot of minutes. He hasn't seen over 22 minutes since he returned from injury. But he's put up back-to-back 31-plus fantasy point games, over 30 in 3 of his last 5. And he's playing Cleveland, who we know is terrible against guards. So Derrick Rose, I'm totally fine with. Going back to the shooting guard, Terrence Ross at 5'1". Of course, same kind of boat here with Fournier. He just put up 31 last game. He's only 5.1K. Washington, of course, allowing the 10th most again, and he's put up over 27 in 2 of his last 3. So Terrence Ross, if you want to go there, I kind of wish he was more in the mid 4K range, but at 5.1, I'm not sure I'll be buying. But I had to put him in here. He's been playing well. Ben McLemore, if Daniel House continues to sit, if he sits again for his illness, just played 34 minutes, put up 47.8 fantasy points. So he will be a play that you can look at again. If Daniel House sits again, he can play a lot of small forward. Just showing the upside there with almost a 48-point fantasy point game. So Ben McLemore is there. Jordan McRae for the Wiz at 3.5. 23.3 and 25.3 in his last 2 at home. Gets Orlando here at home. 24 or more minutes in his last 3 or 5. If you want to play him in tournaments, I think it's totally fine. Moving over to the small forward spot, Kawhi at 8.7. We know Portland versus a small forward spot is not very good. They're actually allowing, 32.1% usage in his last 5 at home, over 41 in his last 5. So we know Kawhi's good. He's going to continue to be really good. He's going to continue to see a high usage rate. Over his last 5, 32.1. Paul George, 28.3. So it's still Kawhi's team, and he's still putting up good numbers. So over 41 in his last 5. Kawhi at 8.7 against Portland is totally in play. Brandon Ingram at 8.1, 40 or more in his last 10. 29.1% usage rate in his last 5 at home. Gets a nice spot here against Dallas at home. So Brandon Ingram will not be overshadowed by Luka. So I would imagine that Brandon Ingram probably has a pretty good game. DeMar DeRozan at 7.2. Houston, of course, against the small forward spot. Daniel House sits. It'll be even better. They're not very good against that spot anyway. 9th most fantasy points to the small forward spot over the last 5. Over 38 in his last 3 at home. And, of course, this is a huge pace-up spot for San Antonio in Houston. In San Antonio. Sorry, Houston's coming to town. Either way, it's going to be a pace-up spot. We know the Rockets who want to run with pace. They're third fastest team over the last 5. So DDR in a good spot here. Nice pace-up spot. And he's cheap at 7.2. And we know Houston doesn't play a lot of defense. So that's a great spot for DDR. John Isaac at 6'9". 39.8 in his last game. Put up a double-double. Had 5 blocks. We know he's great on defense. Showed a little bit of the upside with the offense as well. Playing against Washington, it's a great spot for John Isaac at 6.9. You get Will Barton at home here at 6.1 against the Lakers. He's put up over 41 in his last 2 at home, over 30 fantasy points in his last 8 of 10 at home. Will Barton at home has been a thing all year. We've talked about it, and I'm still a fan. And I'm still a fan at 6.1. So Will Barton will likely be in my tournament plays. Luke Kennard at 5'9", over 30 minutes per game, over 31 in his last 3 of 4. Cleveland, number 1 against the small forward spot over the last 5. So Luke Kennard continues to play well. He's playing tons of minutes at that small forward spot. And, of course, he gets a nut matchup here against Cleveland. So Kennard is in play. Davis Bertans at 5.3, 35 fantasy points in his last game against the Clippers. I'm pretty sure that game was probably out of hand. But either way, he's been playing good minutes off the bench. He's been seeing decent usage, right around 18%, which is fair. And, of course, like I said, he gets Orlando tonight at home. So Bertans at 5'3" is totally fine. Josh Hart at 5'3", just put up a 38.3 fantasy point game, over 34 in his last 2 of 4, over 30 minutes in his last 3 of 4. Josh Hart's finally back to his role after he, had some injury issues there, but now he's back. Good to go. 5.3 is pretty cheap. Like I said, playing over 30 minutes in his last 3 or 4, so 5.3 is totally fine in that game. Of course, you're going to want a lot of pieces. Justice Winslow, I think, kind of goes under the radar here at 4.9. He has not been producing the fantasy points that well, but Toronto could be the cure. They're allowing the 6th most fantasy points to that small forward spot over the last 5. He's played 34, 26, and 30 minutes since returning. He's only put up like 20, and 24 fantasy points, so that's probably going to scare a lot of people away. They're going to not even look at him. But we know that Dragic is out. That's some usage that he could see. So I think Winslow is a fine play at 4.9. Pretty cheap, nice little buy low spot. Moving to power forward, Anthony Davis at 9.6. Denver, we know they have rebounding issues. This should fall right into his lap. 5th most fantasy points to the power forward spot over the last 5, and he's put up 53 or more in his last 3 or 4 on the road. AD, of course, probable to play. He gets a Q tag about every game now. But he should play, should be fine. He's 9.6. He's one of the cheaper top pay-ups on this slate. Pretty nuts price there, considering he's put up 53 or more in his last 3 or 4 on the road. We know he can easily go for 60, so AD at 9.6, the upside's there. Pascal Siakam at 8.5, over 45 in his last 2 or 3 at home. 28.6% usage in his last 5 at home. Guy continues to get it done, continues to put up big numbers, and nobody plays him. So Pascal Siakam against Miami at home, totally fine with. PG-13 at 8.2. It's going to get some mellow defense, which we really love. 45.5 fantasy points in his last game versus Washington. He's, like I said, he has a 28.3% usage rate in his last 5 at home. So still getting nice usage, still seeing good production, and, of course, he gets a pretty nut matchup here against Melo. So PG-13, totally fine with, and I'm totally fine with him and Kawhi if you can fit them. Of course, you need one to have more upside, but, of course, not to say that neither one of them can't go for 50 and the other one still go for 40+. So that is fine with me. Kevin Love at 7K, 37.5 fantasy points last game. Maybe he's healthy again. Maybe we see a big game here. Of course, he's getting Detroit, who we have known that who's allowed some decent games to bigs. So Kevin Love at 7K could be in a really nice buy low spot tonight. Like I said, just put up 38 fantasy points last game. He seems to be back to healthy, and a healthy Kevin Love. We saw what he did in the beginning of the season, so keep that one on your radar. Kristaps at 6.5. New Orleans allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the power forward spot over the last 5. 36 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5 at home. He plays better at home, has a higher usage rate at home, and he gets a really good matchup here against the Pelicans at home. I'm totally fine with he's on the road. I said that wrong. My fault. I'm still fine with Kristaps, though. At 6'5", man, he's basically free. He's going to play probably 30-plus minutes in this game. It's going to be a high-paced matchup. It's a great spot. Of course, they're still allowing that 7th most fantasy points to the power forward spot over the last 5. So Kristaps at 6.5, absolutely. Carmelo even at 6'3". Clippers allowing the 6th most fantasy points to the power forward spot over their last 5. He's put up over 41 in his last 2 of 3. So that is interesting. Of course, Western Conference Player of the Week or whatever. So Carmelo, we know he's going to take shots. We know he's going to get usage. So I'm totally fine with Carmelo at 6.3K. Larry Nance at 5.7. The guy's been beasting lately. Over 30 fantasy points in his last 6 of 7. Over 32 in his last 3. Larry Nance, good spot here against Detroit off the bench. Totally fine with that. Moving along to the center spot, Nikola Jokic at 8.9. I believe he'll show out tonight. He's decently priced. I know he has not been actually, good this year, but he'll get up for this game. Over 36 in his last 4 at home, of course, and he gets the Lakers here at home. So look for a big game for Jokic. Hassan Whiteside at 8K. Clippers versus centers. We know it's been a thing. They've been giving up lots and lots of fantasy points, especially to big centers. He's put up 43.5 and 50.8 in his last 2. Played 30 minutes last game. So that's very, very encouraging for Whiteside. Nobody will probably play him, but it's a great spot, of course, against the Clippers. Capella at 7.8 should be back. Hopefully I don't think Capella's ever been on a minutes limit after he's returned from injury. I think they just put him out there and he just plays 35 minutes again. So Capella at 7-8. San Antonio could be without LaMarcus Aldridge once again. San Antonio's allowing the sixth most fantasy points to that center spot over the last 5, and he's put up over 40 fantasy points in his last 8 games. So Capella obviously will be in play if he does for sure play and have a full allotment of minutes. Bam Adebayo at 7.4, over 42 in his last 2 on the road. Gasol sucks. I like Bam. I think he goes underlooked. I think he's going to be undervalued. His price is just good, and he's playing, 30 minutes or so a game. So Bam, I'm totally fine with at 7.4. On the flip side of that Portland game, you have Montrezl Harrell at 6.8. He's been the closer for the Clippers, put up 47.8 and 59.5 in his last 2 at home, 29, a shade under 23% usage at 22.9 over his last 5 at home. Montrezl Harrell continues to play really well. Totally fine with him against Portland as well at home. Last but not least, Tristan Thompson. Like I said, kind of the same thing with Nance. Detroit versus those center spots. They've been known to give up some pretty big games. He's now put up 35 or more in his last 3 or 4 at home. So if you want to play Tristan Thompson at 6K, I'm totally fine with that as well. So this pod has lasted almost 21 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up. A smaller slate, and I wanted to kind of hone in on more of the plays that I thought were better. I didn't want to throw a bunch of stuff out here that I wasn't too crazy about. So I kind of shortened up my player pool a little bit, but that is my first look over this slate on December 3rd, 2019, 7-game slate. We will talk about this slate, of course, more later. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll talk about it later. See you guys.